There is a total of 20 Rings of Power, with the first 19 forged during the Second Age of Middle-earth by elf-smiths, who unbeknownst to them were under the guidance of Sauron, who presented himself as Anatar, or the Lord of Gifts, with Celebrimbor, played by Charles Edwards, leading his fellow smiths in making them. Each of the rings had different properties and looked distinctly different from each other, but the wearers didn't know the true intent of the rings or of the One Ring, which Sauron would use to control all those who wore the lesser rings. What do the Rings of Power actually do? 9 rings. The first 9 Rings of Power were given to the various leaders of men, who were either kings or warriors or sorcerers before they fell under the thrall of Sauron. They became immortal thanks to the power of those rings, and had the power to see things hidden from others, as well as the ability to become invisible. With the close of the Second Age, they all became ringwraiths, who served Sauron and became known collectively as the Nazgul. In The Lord of the Rings, the Nazgul was on the hunt for the One Ring with Frodo Baggins, Elijah Wood, desperately trying to evade them as he journeyed to Mount Doom to destroy it. 7 rings. There were 7 Rings of Power gifted to the Dwarf Lords, 1 for each of the clans: Durin's Folk, Firebirds, Broadbeams, Iron Fists, Stiffbeards, Blackhawks, and Stonefoots. However, details about the stones or the names of these rings remained unknown. The rings did help the dwarves to establish their treasure hoards by attracting wealth, but they also increased greed, which would lead the wearer's ruin. Interestingly, Sauron was unable to wield as much control over the dwarves as he'd hoped, with the race described as hardy folk, and did not submit to his will. These rings didn't turn the Dwarf Lords invisible, but they were thought to increase their lives. 3 rings. The final 3 rings were for the Elven Kings, and Sauron never touched these, with each one having a name and a gemstone embedded in it. The 3 rings were the Ring of Fire called Narya, the Ring of Adamant called Nenya, and the Ring of Air known as Vilya. Narya was a red ring with the power to rally hope from those around the wearer and face tyranny. Gandalf, Sir Ian McKellen, was given this ring by the elves to wear after they recognized his good nature. The white ring Nenya of Water was worn by Galadriel, Morfydd Clark, and gave her radiance as well as protection and preservation, with some believing it could hide her from evil. Finally, Vilya was the blue ring of air and was thought to heal and preserve, but its powers weren't explicitly stated. This ring was worn by Gil-galad, Benjamin Walker, and later by Elrond, Robert Aramayo. These rings didn't turn their wearer invisible, but instead became invisible once placed on someone's finger, and were thought to aid preservation rather than wielding power as such. We examine the reason orcs can't go in the sun in Rings of Power, insight who fell from the sky in Rings of Power, all the theories, analysis who is Adar in Rings of Power, all the theories, in depth. The One Ring. The most infamous of the rings was the One Ring Sauron created in the fires of Mount Doom, which he would use to control the other ring wearers and make them bend to his will. The One Ring had a special elvish inscription which could only be seen when placed in fire or on Sauron's finger. It was a gold band without any adorning stones. Sauron hoped to influence the thoughts of the other ring-bearers without having to resort to direct military conflict. The Dark Lord put a great deal of his own power into the ring, which meant his abilities increased dramatically when he wore the ring. This ruling ring was thought to have a will of its own and carried out Sauron's will, changing its shape to fit different races. The One Ring could also make its wearer invisible, but also made them almost wraith-like and able to see the spirit world. The Lord of the Rings: The Rings of Power airs on Amazon Prime Video on Fridays.